Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. As you can see, I'm joined today, or I'm with Shabir and Manoa.
Hey guys.
So thank you for joining us. You're going to hear about some of the stuff that we're up to, and let's dig in. So Manoa, why don't you fill us in on where we are with the product, what you guys have been working on for the last several weeks, what's happening, where are we with the product?
Yeah, so there's two main things that we've been focusing on. Number one is just improvements on the blockchain. So this is an ongoing process, right? There's always things that we're looking to improve, things we're looking to enhance. So one of these areas is how can we get this thing to run more efficiently? And part of that was changing some of the strategies that we're using. For instance, recently we released an article, right, that talked about how we change how a new node detects the current state of the network, right? And we go in the article, we go into this thing that we call the Genesis timestamp, right? So that idea kind of was born from this enhancement that we're doing to the system. Okay, how do we get the overall network to run faster, to run more efficiently with a lower memory footprint and stuff like that? So that's part of it. The other thing is the developer documentation. That's still in the work for the moment. And when we do the new source code push sometime this month, then we'll be pushing that documentation along with it.
Great. Okay. And so what's your perspective on the kind of roadmap that you're aware of that the project is going to be taking from a development perspective?
There's a lot going on behind the scenes. I've been talking to Shabir mostly, who's been involved in a lot of this. And personally, I'm excited to see all this stuff starting to happen. There are some things that we're not permitted to speak about yet because of NDA. But there's definitely an exciting future for the blockchain, I feel.
Absolutely.
Great. Okay. So Shabir,
yeah,
the elusive man. What have you been up to? What is going on? People say that there isn't a lot of marketing going on. How do you respond to that?
Oh wow. So as Manoa alluded to, that we do have some NDAs in place, so we got to be kind of careful on that front. But we are marketing, and we're actually marketing tremendously. It's just the type of marketing that we're doing is very strategic in nature. And what we're focusing on is our executives in Fortune 500 companies. And we're really targeting and narrowing in on them. And that's what my days actually consist of: meeting with executives, talking with them, building those relationships. And we've built tremendous relationships thus far. I'd love to share a lot more of that with you, and we will in due time. The challenge is in the competitive landscape that we're in with competitors, letting them know about our strategy can actually be a vulnerability that we don't want to take on at this stage in our company. But rest assured, what we're really working on is getting strategic inroads with companies and with executives within those companies to build solid relationships.
So tell me about what sort of progress, what sort of success you've had with your efforts.
Sure. We've met with several Fortune 100 companies. In fact, to the extent that we've even met with VC arms, and I'm getting in too much detail, I should restrain myself, with VC arms of these companies. As many of our community members will know, some of these very large companies actually have VC arms in and of themselves. When you actually align your goals with certain companies and their objectives, they actually have an interest in actually helping fund you and achieve the goal faster. So we've actually made a lot of inroads on that front as well. So this is really a time, I think 2019 is a really, really exciting time for us. And it's gotten off to a really, really great start. Starting from I guess the CES to where we are now, it's been really, really exciting.
Yeah. So for me, CES was really about looking at use cases, and I spoke about some of those last week, the week before, and identifying what's the right use case to apply our cloud to. And what Shabir is really doing is taking that and building thing that we're excited about is that we have NDAs in place with large companies, right? To essentially talk about how we make these things a reality. So it's a particularly exciting time, but I understand from the community's perspective, it's a challenge because there's very little that we're able to communicate, that we're contractually obligated not to discuss this stuff at this point in time. And that's natural in any capacity, right? When you're planning something, it's a challenge that it can't be discussed until that phase is complete and something has begun, at least, right? Anything else you want to share about, maybe some of the successes? What types of people?
With Sparkster, we made it a point to actually look and solve real world problems. And in the life cycle of any startup venture, any entrepreneurial venture, especially in the technology space, you have to validate your assumptions. And what's really exciting to me, at least in this phase, is that our assumptions thus far have been validated. And that's really what's powerful, because it's this concept and what we're talking to executives about is actually resonating with them at a very high level. Hence the NDAs in place, hence the partnerships, hence everything that's going on. You don't get to the point where you sit in a meeting with top level executives of Fortune 100 companies unless you have something substantive and you're actually solving a real problem that exists. And therefore, we're able to leverage that capability. The technology that we're developing and have developed thus far is helping to realize the dreams of a digital world for some of the biggest companies in the world much sooner. And that's really what's very powerful about this. We're bringing what other companies that had anticipated to being a few years out a bit sooner for them. And this is where you actually build the traction. And this is why we spend a lot of time and have spent a lot of time at Sparkster strategizing. It's about working smarter, and it's about actually solving those pain points in relative time. And that's really what's helped us get there. To the marketing point that we had kind of talked about a little bit more, there's big multi-billion dollar companies that market actually extensively, but the general public may not hear about them. For example, Lockheed Martin or others. They're focused on the defense sector. So the people they're marketing to are defense generals, military generals, people of that nature. And the general public may not hear about that, but that's a multi-billion dollar company. Actually. Yeah. So these are things to keep in mind. Actually, Manohar actually has experience there. So these are companies that the general public may not hear as much about, but they're doing huge things.
I think what's analogous to that idea, right, is that we're as an industry, I think we're dealing with the challenge that we as an industry have to facilitate adoption of technology, of the technology that we as an industry have created in the mainstream, right? Mm-hmm. And that requires a few things. It requires that we solve a real world problem, right? Unfortunately, up to this point, the industry, for a large part of the industry, has created technology for technology's sake, right? It's like creating highways in the sky for a desolate city. There's many of those in China, where there's skyscrapers and a railway and all of these things, but no one lives in those cities. I feel like that's analogous to what crypto is today. We have, we as an industry are struggling with adoption as an industry. But at Sparkster, it's the number one thing that we're focused on is how can we're not just building technology for technology's sake. Right. We're ensuring that everything that we do is about real world adoption, right? And we're seeing traction in that regard, right, with the conversations that we're having, right? There's interest in how we might apply our technology to problems that exist, to challenges that companies have. Some of these companies have in implementing their own business plan. In terms of competing with other people in their space, and how they can get to their goals quicker, and how we can bring our technology to make those goals achievable quicker. Those are some of the conversations we're having, right? And like I said, because we're, like Shabir has alluded to, because we're bound by NDA, there's very little that we're able to talk about.
And I think to add to that point, our community will appreciate this perhaps more than anyone, that whether it's our marketing strategy or our business strategy at large, Even when we brought some of the things to the forefront, for example, when we pushed the envelope with our 10 million transactions per second, after we brought this to the forefront as a possibility in this space, several companies actually followed suit. And this is something that a really great book that I recommend everyone to read is actually by Andy Grove, the founder of Intel. Only the Paranoid Survive. Andy Grove is actually an institution in Silicon Valley for those in the tech space. He's written two books that are fundamental. One is High Output Management, which is kind of a book for management that is followed by some of the greatest minds in Silicon Valley. And the other is actually one of Steve Jobs' favorite books, which is Only the Paranoid Survive. And several other VCs really, really love this book. And what it talks about is you need to have a sort of a positive paranoia as a technology company. And what that means is you have to have this feeling that there's always people on your back who are trying to take your strategy, they're trying to take your moves. And so Steve Jobs actually did this. If those who know, because I appreciate that many people in our community may have a technology background, but there may be people who don't have a technology background. So for those who may not be aware, Steve Jobs always kept the technology people away from the design people, for example. And he was very well known for this. And the idea was to make sure that if these people went to other companies, for example, that they actually, no one had the whole recipe, if you will, to do that. So for us at this stage as a strategy, it's very, very important for us to be very strategic, to be very focused, and to be in the trenches, which we have been, working day in and day out, to bring the best value to Sparkster and our community at large. But that doesn't really happen by us making everything necessarily known at that point.
Yeah, I think, one of the challenges here is that the expectations here are that there are major wins in short order, but we're not talking about making things happen in the crypto world, which sometimes is just a piece of paper that's been signed or agreed that doesn't manifest into anything, right? We're working on the one problem that the entire industry has, which is real world adoption, right? And solving that problem is of paramount importance to the survival, not just of Sparkster, but of the survival of the industry. Without it, there is no industry. And I think that that's a reality that a lot of people haven't woken up to and haven't accepted, right? And so, I'm hearing a lot of criticism from our community with regards to, what we're doing, and that we should be more focusing, we should have our efforts more focused on the crypto community. But I ask you, what value is there speaking in our own silo? How does that ensure longevity? How does that result in creating any of the things that we've all talked about? It doesn't, right? Unless we do the hard work of convincing people outside of the crypto industry about how we might be able to apply the technology from the crypto industry to solve problems in the real world. If we're not able to, if it's us or somebody else, if this industry isn't able to make that manifest, we have no industry. We have no future, right? So from the very beginning, this has been a focus of ours. This is what we work on every single day, right? And it's the unfortunate reality is that you have to trust us. And it's really the only option there is. You have to trust that we're here every single day, every single week, or every 2 weeks, keeping you updated about what we're doing. If we were not doing what we said we are doing, firstly, we wouldn't have some of the existing partnerships. We wouldn't have some of the relationships that we've told you about over the last 6 months, and we wouldn't have new relationships that we hope to tell you about in the future. Right. So the reality is that we either win together or we fail together. And the constant criticism that we're receiving, I think, is unwarranted, simply because, we're not able to release the full picture. So there's been some questions about the roadmap. What does the roadmap look like? Why have we not released a roadmap for 2019? Well, the answer is very simple and it's logical, right? If we're in the process of defining, the opportunities with where we're going to apply our technology, if we're negotiating those relationships right now, how can we specify that this is what we're going to be working on 3 months, 6 months, 9 months from now, right? Those things are not yet determined, because what we should be doing, rather than building technology for technology's sake, we should be building technology to solve a problem so that we can manifest real world adoption. It's what we've talked about from the very beginning. It's what we work on every single day. All of us, that is. That's, including Manoa here, right? While what they're doing and what they're building, what they've built so far, may seem simple to you, it's been invaluable to us in communicating how our network works, in communicating what our network can do and how it can solve particular problems that we're working to get our foot in the door in, if you will, right? So we're at the stage where we have NDAs in place, that's meaningful and substantial. My trip here to the States has been tremendously valuable from that perspective. And, I'm here to see the job get done. So, I'm here now working with Shabir to make these things happen. Manoa, any thoughts you want to share on that?
Yeah, I think, what you just said, Saj, about the roadmap and stuff like that, it goes for anything, right? Even if you look at it from purely the software point of view, right? These things are fluid, they're flexible. So many times it's difficult to draw up a roadmap that says definitely by this time this will be completed, or definitely by that time these 5 things will be in place, right? Because there's unexpected challenges that come up. There's fluidity that you have to allow for, right?
Right. Absolutely. And that's, I think, one of our challenges. But rest assured, I think we're all working around the clock to make these things a reality and make this happen. But to your point, Manoa, with respect to timelines and goals and objectives, we definitely have set internal timelines, goals that are actually audacious goals for us as a team and as a company at large. And we will release those when the time is right, when it's most appropriate. We pride ourselves, and I speak for myself, and I think I speak for the whole team, we actually pride ourselves on audacious goals. And we've been pushing the envelope. I think our tech team, our technology team led by Manoa and Amit and our respective technology, they've been pushing the envelope. I mean, I don't know if the community gave the due course in terms of all the effort that was relied on. In fact, I think somebody had spread that sometimes some people spread these rumors and they sometimes stick. Sometimes we'd like to actually be in the community. I'd love to be in the community and on Telegram and speaking to everyone, but we have a lot of stuff going on and we can't lose track of our direction. Someone had perhaps said that we had a lot more developers than we actually do. These guys were working around the clock. When in a startup, you're working at many a times with bare bones, or a lean startup, bootstrapping up and building up towards this big goal, audacious goal. And these guys were working around the clock. So internally, whether we publicize them or not, we have some really, really big goals that we're striving to achieve. And we've made big headwinds and we've made big progress towards them. That's the collaborations, that's the NDAs that we have that we will release in due time. But rest assured, this is a time where we are on the track for actually working. There's a time for marketing, and when that happens, when the time is appropriate, we will do the appropriate marketing and make this global. But right now we're in a strategic marketing phase. So we're marketing to the right people, to the appropriate people, in order to get the maximum value out of our efforts and make sure that when the time is right, we're going to scale. We've always been global, and that's always our mindset. But it's think global, act local. And for us, local, maybe Silicon Valley right now, and maybe the technology industry. That's really what we're focused on.
Yeah. I was in Silicon Valley just last week, actually. Yeah. So we've received some questions. Let me get to those. The first question's for you, Manoa. What's the latest update on the issues in network stability?
Yeah, so like I said at the beginning of this talk, we are working on certain things, and we do plan to do a new source code push sometimes it also with that will come, of course, a new deployment.
Can you give them some specifics on some of the optimizations or improvements that you've been making? Give them some examples if you can.
So one of the big things we observed was an issue with memory, right? So our goal, of course, with these nodes is to have them up 24/7 without fail, right? And in order to do that, these nodes have to take the minimal amount of memory possible, right? So we've really been working on optimizing that, making sure that these nodes don't take more memory than is absolutely necessary to run them. And then another thing we've been working on is the efficiency of the nodes, right? So how many resources does this node actually take up, right? Is it going to eat up 80% of your CPU power or just 5%, right? And all that contributes to a long-running node, right? So with that, you also get stability and stuff like that. It naturally follows. So we're working on a lot of these optimizations to make sure that you guys, when you run these nodes, you're getting the best experience possible.
Okay. Was there, Shabir, maybe for you, you can take this. Was there progress on the identification of potential use cases?
Oh, most certainly. I think we had internally we had narrowed down to a few use cases. For those familiar with startup strategy, you want to have a beachhead, and I think it's very safe to say that several of those use cases, in particular, a couple come to mind, actually resonated very strongly with some of these executives and leaders at these top companies. Without giving too much away, it's really picked some very solid use cases that help deliver amazing technology in a very short, condensed time frame.
Yeah. So the third question is that which product does Sparkster currently identify as their main competitor? We're not looking at the crypto market from the perspective of competitors. We're looking in the real world for competitors, and I would say that Amazon and Microsoft are our main competitors because we are looking to disrupt the traditional cloud model, and that's what we're working on, trying to make happen. And what we're talking to major companies about, in effect, is how we disrupt the traditional cloud model. So our competitors are in the real world. We're competing with the strategy of Amazon and Microsoft and such. The next question I received is, what do we think about another project that has, that are talking about 1 million TPS as a potential competitor? I'm not familiar with this project. I only received questions this morning. So yeah, I'm not familiar with the project. And again, like I said, our focus is not trying to compete with other projects in the crypto industry. I think it's better for us to collaborate as an industry to facilitate real world adoption. But it's, I don't know from your perspective, maybe you guys can fill us in. How many companies do you hear that are actively working on real world adoption, and what's been the progress of that? Because as I say, I firmly believe that without that, we as an industry don't have a future. And if we're not focused on real world adoption, it will be somebody else that picks up the pieces from our open source efforts and turns those into real world usable products, right? But there will be no value returned to those token holders, right? So in terms of building that ecosystem and so forth. So what's important here is that we make those efforts, not somebody else take them from us. And I'm talking collectively as an industry. This is a mindset. If you've been listening to our AMAs, this is a mindset we've had from the very beginning, right? That it's real world adoption that matters, nothing else. And so we're focused on that 100% and all the time. And so, I've made the decision to step back my involvement with the community because, frankly, it's counterproductive, right? It impacts morale. The sentiment in the community impacts morale, and it takes valuable time away from us doing what we're supposed to be doing. And so I'm choosing to focus my time and my efforts rather than continually responding to the same questions and appeasing the community. Spending my time on doing what is in the best interests and in the long-term interests of our token holders, which is working on building that ecosystem, working on facilitating real world adoption. And that's what I should be doing. And that's my, my instructions to the team is that we need to do what we're here to do, what our white paper promises we will be focusing on doing, not being sidetracked. Now, in terms of the criticism, it's important to say that, look, the criticism really hurts the community more than it hurts anybody else. The people that are going to be impacted most by the skepticism and by, all of this stuff is you guys, far more than us, right? Our tokens are locked for years. And by the time our tokens are unlocked, which is 2 years after your tokens are unlocked, value will be our efforts will be manifest. So if there's anyone that loses out in the short term, it's you, not us, right? So the only choice you have here is to support our efforts. Criticizing us and hurling abuse at our admins, firstly, will not be tolerated. There's people that are saying threats that frankly, borderline illegal. But nonetheless, right, the impact here is that you're compromising our relationship. You're compromising our relationship, and it doesn't serve you to operate like that, right? There's nothing disingenuous or dishonest about anything that we're doing here. If there was, we sure as hell wouldn't be here on camera with you every couple of weeks, right? But the reality is we are here, and the reality is that you've seen our efforts manifest, right? Meaning that you can see a network, and there are improvements to the network that you're able to observe that we're making, right? There's a code push that's coming in February, so your best bet is to support our efforts, and that's my recommendation to you guys as a community. Naturally, you're free to do as you please. What advantages will I get in building on Sparkster instead of other platforms like Ripple or Stellar? So Ripple and Stellar are currency platforms, right? Meaning that they're environments for transacting in currency. And that governs a small percentage of, while that governs transactions, we're not in the payment transaction business. We're in the software execution transaction business. We're in the cloud business, which is completely different from the payment industry. So I would say that, when you're building on Sparkster, you're building software that's designed to run as a piece of software that interacts and coordinates between multiple components. Trying to do that, for example, on another network gets complicated, it gets expensive. There are privacy limitations and security limitations. For example, on Ethereum, trying to communicate between two contracts, which is tantamount to what two functions would really be, or something analogous to that. You end up with a lot of challenges in how that gets implemented, whereas we follow a much more software development approach to this sort of communication. So, we're solving different problems at the end of the day. And so that's really the benefit.
I can also speak to that a little bit. Because I've done a few things with Stellar smart contracts, especially.
Sure,
and
go for it.
the thing that is important to highlight here is that when you run a piece of code on our network, it's completely run on our network itself, right? If you write a Stellar smart contract, a lot of the code you write, because as Saj rightfully pointed out, you interact with Stellar when it comes time for financial transactions, right? With our network, the entire piece of code is run completely on our network, and it's done in JavaScript, right? So yes, you can also code in JavaScript using Stellar, but all that JavaScript is run client side, completely 100%, until it comes time to interact with the network. So the benefit you get with us is that you're running this code across our entire network. So your whole JavaScript application is run in a distributed manner.
Thank you for that, Mo.
Yeah.
Next question: What is stopping us to do marketing? Even to do marketing, we're delaying. Well, so what and who are we marketing to? First, it comes down to the use case, right? We've got to develop a use case, have it be manifest in the real world, being used. In the past, I've talked about vehicles. So we've got to make sure that our technology is embedded in the vehicle, right? Or is being used in such a capacity. And until that happens, the marketing that we're doing is focused on facilitating relationships, facilitating those sorts of use cases, and implementing being implemented and directed in that sort of way. So from a technology perspective, we've got to make sure that we now focus on taking what we've built as an alpha and focusing it on a particular use case. We've got to make sure that before we invest the engineering efforts in a specific direction, while we're working on the optimization of the network itself in general, before we focus on something too specific, we're going to make sure that those relationships, we have contracts signed and that there's, an agreement that our network will be used in specific ways, right? That's the work that we're doing today. And again, that's the reason why, the roadmap is not something that's been released, because, of the 6 use cases that we're working on, which of those is the one that we're going to work on first? That's where our efforts for the entire year are going to go, right? So, we can't tell you it's going to be X when it ends up being Y, right? Because we're going to get questioned, well, why didn't you do X, and so forth, rather than create unnecessary confusion. Give us the time to get these things completed, right? Complete our negotiations and begin focusing in a specific direction. And as and when we can, by virtue of our NDA, we'll release information about this publicly, right? Like I said, we're in this together. Everybody here wins together. And it's best that we collaborate and we work together as a community. We come together and we have to stop the infighting. As I've said before, right? A house divided falls, right? I think Abraham Lincoln says something to those words. So,
house divided cannot stand.
A house divided cannot stand. There you go. The words of Abraham Lincoln. This is our predicament today, guys. If we don't come together, right, you will lose far more than we will, because our results will be manifest by the time that we get to the point where our tokens are unlocked. But the point remains, I don't want to see that happen for anybody in our community, even the people that are critical of us. That's not my goal for anybody. So my request is that we all come together, right? We didn't cause this downturn. The reality is the downturn happened independently of us, nothing to do with us, right? And unlocking in the past would be irresponsible. Give us the time to do our work, to produce meaningful, substantial results, right? And that's the time to unlock. When there's people banging on our door to buy tokens. Right now, no one's buying anything. No one's buying anything. The market, the industry is in a state of stalemate, waiting for someone like Sparkster to create real world adoption. Well, what I can tell you is that Sparkster, the people here and more, are 100% laser focused on making that a reality, real world adoption. That's what we eat, sleep, drink, dream, you name it. That's what we do every single day, and all day, all night, all weekend. That's what we're working on. That's what we're focused on. That's where our energy, our mind, our focus is. Real world adoption. That's what we're doing this for, right? So, it's in everybody's interest to support our efforts. And I'm going to stress again that, saying abusing our admins will not be tolerated. Will not be tolerated. You know, there'll come a point where they'll stop responding to the community in DM, right? Because they're going to get fed up. Making threats against me or against them is uncalled for, right? And it is completely inappropriate. The reality is that we're extremely communicative with the community, and you know, get your act together, guys, because if you don't, you lose. You lose, frankly. Right? We're not going anywhere. Let me be clear. We will work on doing what we're doing every single day, and we'll continue to do so regardless of what the community thinks and feels and what the sentiment is, right? We will deliver. That's a reality, right? The question is, will you participate in that success or not? That's down to whether you guys can keep it together or not. That's the ultimate reality here. You know, unfortunately, you know, we have to have such a frank conversation because things are getting out of hand, and it's unacceptable, right? This sort of community disparity and disparage is what causes and pressures projects like Eden to unlock at absolutely the wrong time, right? And if anyone wants to recall, if anyone recalls what happened to Eden when they made the decision under pressure to unlock, right? Under pressure to unlock, what happened? Absolute mayhem. Their token fell through the floor and collapsed, right? And if you look at their community today, it's desolate, right? Let's not do that here. That rests in your hands. You as an individual rests in your hands. Come together, support our efforts. You can see we're here every week, every 2 weeks, talking to you, not only talking to you, but working extremely hard. We've partnered with some of the most incredible organizations in the world, right? We've got collaborations with the University of Cambridge. We've got things coming in short order that are, you know, unbelievable, right? Hold it together, because if you don't, you know, unfortunately, this isn't going to work out very well. But we, Sparkster, will succeed. We will succeed. The question is, will you see that success? Doing, and you know, and I want you to understand that this is everything. This is absolutely everything to us, right? This is not a hobby. This is not something that we do part-time. This is what I dream about.
Blood, sweat, and tears. This
is blood, sweat, and tears for every single person on our team. You know, one of the comments I saw, right, that there's, you know, that nobody works at Sparkster. Every single person you see on our homepage works at Sparkster full-time, on Sparkster every single day, full-time. So, you know, don't think that we're here doing nothing, right? And also the reality is that I continue to pay every single person out of my own pocket. And I wouldn't do that if I didn't believe in the future of this project, right? So thank you for your time, guys. We need to hold the ship together. Right? We succeed together or we fail together. Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely weekend.